Previously on.
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 Previously on the recap sequence.
Hey folks, welcome to the recap sequence. We're back with another great episode with some local creators and pets. We have Sebastian Roy and Brianna Ormond on the show today.
Thanks for being here today.
Welcome to our show.
That's good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for having us.
So I want to ask, like, you're both artists. We've met you now at the last two shows here in Fredericton, and what made you guys want to become artists, like get into this industry? Brianna, I'll start with you.
I'm trying to think. It was definitely anime.
Really?
Yeah, it was. Staying up at like 3 a.m. watching Naruto and Bleach on YTV. And then progressed into reading like the mangas. And after that, it was just like wanted to learn how to draw every character and everything. So that was mine anyways.
How long have you been at it?
Well, oh God. I think I was 12, so 15 years now?
Wow.
No, that's not right. Maybe. Yeah, maybe.
Okay,
So-
and that doesn't make me feel old at all.
So do you have, because with manga it's back to front, right? When you're reading.
Yeah.
Okay, and are you capable of doing it that way now?
Oh yeah. I
Really?
have like, oh yeah, I've read so many manga now, probably over 500 different mangas.
Wow.
So I'm very used to it.
And Seb, you've been at this for years, so we know each other out of this realm a little bit. We've worked in the same building, and we frequent the same local comic store. How long has this been your thing? Is this like an every Wednesday thing that you kind of kept running with, or?
I'm gonna say, and it's gonna date me, but for me,
Don't worry about that.
yeah, it started back like I grew up in Edmonton, French community, and um, European comics influence was in my life from a very early age. The Tintins and the Smurfs and the Spiel and a lot of those characters that you see in Europe, Asterix, Lucky Luke, stuff like that. And I have a bookshelf behind me with a massive collection of European comics. So for me, it started, then, and then it was mostly European. I dabble a little bit into, collecting American comic books, but I really started more around the I'm going to say the mid '90s, where I started to collect. And at the same time, I always enjoyed drawing, right? And then I went to school here at UNB, and at the time, it kind of took a bit of a backseat because I was busy doing other things, of course, and going through university. And it was more like recently, I gotta say, in the last probably 6, 7 years, or even the last decade, I guess, that I started to, sell art online, and then a few years ago, I was approached by, a guy in St. John about putting together some stories for him and whatnot, and that's where it came. So it's been a long time passion for me. I love comic books. I've got a massive collections. I don't watch as many anime probably as Brianna. My sons do, and I've watched some with them. I've always been a big fan. I've been watching the adaptation of Avatar. I remember watching the original Avatar. I've watched like Pokemons and shows like that. I've always kind of liked that anyways. And not to the point of reading books, but really always enjoyed some of the artwork, like the stuff you see on TV. Some of the movies have been incredible. They've done amazing productions, beautiful coloring, and just unbelievable animation, right? So, and then, you guys grew up around the same time as I did, like, the Batman animated adventure, stuff like that was just unbelievable, right? To watch that kind of stuff and kind of grow up with that perfection in animation, right? So it was just that's where a lot of my background comes from, really.
It's interesting. You hit like a total nostalgia nerve when you mentioned Lucky Luke and Asterix and Obelix
Tintin,
because
yeah.
and Tintin because here in New Brunswick we're a bilingual province. I took a late immersion, but we had core French, and I really that was the only French you could read in elementary school was
Right.
with and they were really sought after when free time for reading. Like these were the books that just disappeared so quickly. So I thank you for that. That was
Memory trip, right? For
totally, yeah.
Um, one of the things we've noticed when we do like go to conventions and stuff now, especially since the pandemic, is that the industry has seems to have exploded with a lot of independent creators, artists, writers, all of that stuff. Do you find like what are your guys' take on this? How hard was it for you guys to get into breaking into the industry and now seeing it where it is today?
So I have a background in animation actually. I work in an animation studio.
Oh wow.
So yeah, so I'm a background painter for a small animation company in Halifax. Um, and getting into that was so hard. It took because I graduated college during the pandemic. So yeah, not great. Um, and so it was like a year and a half before I could find work there. But during that time, I was at a convention in PEI actually, and I met um, Justin there. And Leanne, his wife, she's like his little scout person. So she goes around to all the tables and tries to find artists that um, they can work with. And she happened to stop at my table and she introduced herself and then had Justin come over and we got to talking a little and he basically just asked for my portfolio when I got back home into Halifax. And from there, I've just been kind of working on covers and then when was it? I think it was September or October. That's when we started doing the independent comic Got Your Six. And I'm actually working on another one with Justin and a my colleague Jarvis. Um, and on the I'm also working on my own comic as well. Like and I like my own story. So I'm very busy. But I've only been doing it for about 2 years now, I think.
That's incredible.
And that sounds incredibly
Yeah.
busy. When we were
Yeah.
we were chatting with Justin, he did mention he's very aware of how busy you are, but he's also very aware of how demanding he is. So
Just a little.
he's got
Just
he
a
sets a
little.
bar, and yeah, he did touch on that. That's a crazy amount of work to be doing. Um,
Yeah.
and Seb, you're pretty busy too. So you've got Maple Leaf Comics, and your involvement in Got Your Six, and your own independent work. How's all that going?
Yeah, so obviously I work in kind of 8 to 5 job, right? And um so evenings are sort of the really in weekends are the time that you know, I have to split between kind of family time. Thankfully, my kids are in late teens now, so I'm pretty much ignored, so I can do whatever I need to do.
Yeah.
But so I gotta find it's squeezing it in. I do curls, so I also have to try to fit that in there as well. But when Justin had approached me about doing, I had done some small stuff with Paul Beal out of St. John for Red Leaf Comics. I'd done the other little covers for some of their, Christian comics. I always say I'll do whatever. Like I have a very adaptable style, so I did a lot of commissions for kids with their names and different characters and stuff like that. I just like I was approached by Paul about 6 or 7 years ago to work. I told him right from the get-go, I said I don't mind putting together stories and stuff like that. But I can't commit to like these very, very long term, very busy, an issue a month kind of deal because I just can't do it, right? If not, I'll be putting out crap essentially, and I wanted to make sure that that I have a job, right? I love the aspect of, for me, it's really a hobby. Very, I am very fortunate to be able to do it. When I grew up, I went into engineering. I did almost go into animation stuff like that, but back then in the mid 90s, it wasn't exactly how it is now. And I kind of knew what my limitations were at the time, right? And now knowing how what I can do, I wish maybe I should have tried it just to see, right? But you kind of forget about the past, like whatever. And that now I can still put some stuff out there, whether it reaches two people or 100 people. It's very different, I guess, probably for me and Brianna, because for me it's not a source of income, right? I don't have to rely on that to survive at home. Um, so it's a very different perspective there, right? Like it's not like I'm gonna just put some, like I said, put some crap together and push it through. Even after Brianna colored stuff and we had it all done, I was like, oh man, I really wish I would have done this differently. I'd love to redo that. And I've done that. I've done complete stories where I've redone the whole thing just to try to sell it, and all 20 pages, whatever it was. And so I'm always shopping around. I've got my own stuff that I like to work on that I've got 6, 7 pages. I haven't been able to work on it for like months now, right? And it's the kind of thing you get so busy that obviously you're going to go with the stuff that pays first and then the rest kind of comes behind. So it's a juggling act, I guess, at this point. But, to answer your initial question, really, you were talking about indie comics and stuff. And I think people, obviously, I love Marvel, I love DC, I love the stuff that they're putting out. There's stuff I don't like, but, I always say everybody's got their own um, sort of taste, right? But indie comics, you can sometimes it's fun to encourage local creators, right? I think there's some amazing potential. I've seen some of the stuff Brianna's done. I've seen some of the stuff that Al's been involved with, and some of the stuff that's produced right here in the Maritimes, and it's kind of cool to see. What I it's amazing. Like this project was really fun because normally if I do it my own project, I'll do everything coloring, and I'll do all the lettering and everything, right? So it's a lot of work. Where here was nice, I could just focus on my thing and move it along, right? And Brianna would then do the next step, and Chris would do the lettering. So it was kind of nice not to have to worry about the stuff that came after. I did what I had to do, and I was done with it, right? So
Was there conversations back and forth, Brianna, between you and Sebastian? Like once Sebastian sends you the sheet and you start is he?
but
We
it's
have a
funny.
Facebook group.
Am I opening Pandora's box here?
I always and I remember mentioning that to Justin right in the beginning. I said, listen, if Brianna sees something that she doesn't like, I know she's big on the digital art. She does a lot of digital art where I do some, but I dabble in it. I'm not like I'm a pen on paper kind of guy. I said if she sees something that doesn't make sense, an arm that's sticking out the wrong way or whatever, she can fix it, which I know she's fixed up, which is fine with me because I'm like, listen, she does it a lot more than I do, and I've seen her work, and it's beautiful. So I'm like, I'm not gonna stop her from if she, because it to me it's very collaborative like that. We don't really have spoken to one another a lot during the process, probably never, I don't think.
Okay.
But it's just a weird thing. Like, it's not that I didn't want to talk to Brianna. It just never happened, right? It was just like that, I guess. Once I was done, like I said, I let her handle it, and when she would post the pictures on Dropbox and I'd be looking, holy crap, that looks awesome, right? Like I never had to complain about anything. It was better than I even envisioned it would look like. When you put the colors on it, you start to see it come together, and you see 5, 6 pages in sequence, and you're like, okay, this is starting. Because myself, the way I drew it, I never read the whole story. I only started to do page by page by page, right? So I didn't know what to expect at the end. And the way the guys put it together, it's not like, if I got to page 7, I'm like, oh, I was supposed to include that in page 1. They wrote it so well that there was no surprises, in the sense that I should have drawn maybe the guy with the scar in the beginning, but I only find out like halfway through the book that he had a scar. Now I got to go back and had a scar and tell Brianna, whatever. And then when I got to the end, I see like kind of that this surprise ending. I'm like, and I knew there was a surprise ending, but I was like, okay, this is cool, right? So I was almost like I was reading it at the same time as a reader would.
Mhm.
So it was, I didn't want to spoil it for myself. I knew there was a little, like I was told by Justin that it was a little bit of a cliffhanger, whatever you want to call it, at the end. And so, like I said, it was a cool way to do it. Whereas a lot of other stories, other writers I've worked with will sometimes I'll finish a page and you'll turn to the next page and you'll say, well, he was sitting down maybe on a stool. Now he's in a car. Well, how did he go from sitting on a stool to the car all of a sudden? That transition is missing, right? And I'm like, how do I show that? So maybe I'll show them like, just entering the car or add a panel in there, like, whereas here, not that I didn't have that creative liberty of adding something. It's just I don't think it was required, right? Because the boys really did a good job kind of making it transition very well that you didn't have like five panels to, explain that he was going from here to here.
Hmm.
But the way they wrote the story, I didn't feel like I needed to add panels to make the story flow better. It just worked really well, which really a testament to how well the guys put together the story, in my view, because I've seen, it's not like the Marvel method where you're like, yeah, yeah, take two characters and draw 22 pages and we'll put words to it, right? Like it
Yeah.
was, but there was some liberty to say if you won't, like if they say you're in a bar, they weren't saying, well, make sure you put, this whiskey in the back or this and this. It's just like you had the liberty of putting what you wanted in the back. So, it wasn't like detailed to the point where I'm just like a robot just drawing whatever they need to. So that was
Hmm.
nice, right? And I think that translates back into coloring and everything else that comes after. I think it was a really cool. It was very well done. I knew about Al before, heard about him, but with Justin, like I said, it was very smooth. There was nothing that I was like, I feel like we need to add something in here.
So Brianna, then in terms of the coloring process for you, how much research? Because I know one thing that really stood out with us was when we talked to Justin and Hal was Justin's background. It's a military background. So was he providing you a lot of like sort of direction in terms of coloring, or how much of that research did you do yourself? Because I've seen some of the stuff and the work that you and Sebastian, I can't wait until I get my hands on my book. So
Um, I have a little bit of knowledge. My dad was military. I think he's still military. I don't really know. Um, but so I had some background, and Armacto is a military base, so
Mhm.
you kind of just know. But when I didn't know, Justin would provide me with like a lot of the color schemes, especially for the desert, like the tent colors and the uniform colors. But otherwise, he was pretty low key with the coloring style and the coloring colors, the palette I was using. He didn't have many notes, mostly about the uniforms. That was about it.
Wow. So when
Mhm.
you get a like how does the process then, like Sebastian's got the page, does he just send it to you, put it in Dropbox and send you a note and say, I've got the first three pages to you and off you go from there?
Pretty much, honestly,
Yeah.
he would just write a little note in Facebook, say he's got the pages up, and I would download them in color and then
How,
post them usually the next day.
oh wow.
Hey, that
I,
quickly.
Yeah,
it's a,
Wow.
I was
yeah.
I think my goal in the thing was I wanted a minimum a page a week. Like Justin and I had
Mhm.
talked about a certain timeline to get it done. I was able to always produce at least one page a week. Ideal, I could produce almost two. But again, I
Mhm.
didn't want to rush it because I'm like, this is like was really my first more published work that was, not just like Red Leaf Comics, which is mostly online and stuff like that. So I wanted to have a certain amount of like if you associate your name with something, you obviously, if it looked like crap, I'd say, yeah, don't put my name in there, just put everybody else, right? But it wasn't the case. So, well, you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
I don't know. Like, it's like you do tend to push to get the best quality work out there. And like I said, I'm very critical of my stuff. I go back now, I'm like, oh, there's still one panel. I'm like, I wish Justin would have said, can you please just redraw it because I can still see it, and I'm like, I don't like how it was a view from above, and anyways, it doesn't look as good as it doesn't look good at all in my view. But
We are our own worst critics.
right,
Yep.
but one
Yep.
of the thing to add to what Brianna was saying, um, I asked the questions at first because he was like, okay, well, you have an LEV vehicle here, LEV 46, and he's got this weapon, he's got this. I'm like, okay. I said, so I did some research. The big thing I wanted was to we knew that it wasn't going to be like like you have these artists that are very good at going into unbelievable details with the straps of the bulletproof vest they're wearing, no so many pockets and little knife here and a little bullet thing here or whatever, right? And patches and whatever and badges and stuff. And so I said, can you at least send me a basic uniform that you would wear when you were out there in
Oh, wow.
Afghanistan, at least to get an idea of what it looked like. And I said, what I'm going to do, of course, there's certain scenes where the guys are just running out of the bunker. They don't have the full gear. They only have their green t-shirt and their army pants. Um, so for that, I got a little bit more liberty there because they were more in their kind of off-duty, clothing. And a t-shirt is a lot easier to draw than like the whole because there's a bunch of stuff and there's even some I could have added CBs, but I'm I struggle a little bit art wise to go into a lot of details because a lot when you've probably seen some of my commission, I'm more of a very minimalist, I'm gonna say, when it comes to drawing like superheroes and stuff. I don't go into like a lot of cross hatching and stuff like that. It has more a little bit of that cartoony vibe, cleaner lines, I think, which comes a lot from European comic books. And I, I, but at the same time, I wanted to give enough that it looked like, if you have the camouflage patterns and stuff like that, that it would give an indication. Brianna could erase some lines and say, okay, I'm going to put a darker green here and a beige here and a whatever. Um, and because it is, if you go into when you look at the uniforms they wear now, there's a lot of the patterns now. It's not like it used to be back in the day. It's a lot of little squares basically. Think of
Mhm.
Tetris, right? Just a
Yeah.
bunch of
Yeah.
little, and then they vary in colors. So even myself, I did a cover for one of the books that I colored myself, and I was trying to find a tool in I use Clip Studio, and what I used to mimic those squares is there's actually a function called rubble, which is a bunch of rocks and stuff in different sizes. So normally you could get him massive rocks on the screen, but I made him really small. So when I went and did the coloring, it looked to it looked like basically the patterns that you see of these different uniforms. And I knew when Brianna was doing it, like you could tell what she was doing, like, and it's very time consuming because you have, I think, 4 or 5 different colors of a very similar palette, like a lot of beige and light greens and darker browns because they're in the desert, which would be different if they were in the forest, right? So, just little things like that I wanted to, because at the same time, you're trying to sell it to potentially some military guys, some guys that are in military, and
Hmm.
you kind of want to do it justice, right? You don't
Yep.
want to slap it together. So, but I went with sort of one style uniform and stuck with that, the whole way, just to made it kind of easier to redraw all the time and get better at it, I
Mhm.
suppose. Same thing with the guns, right? Like you can add all kinds of bells and whistles on the gun, but I'm thinking like sometimes it gets muddled when you reduce it to print size and stuff like that. So I kind of kept it a little bit more very clear lines as opposed to hatching and all that stuff, which I'm not really good with anyway. So I was like, well, it makes it
I'm
quite
same
easy,
way.
right? I started doing it. I'm like, it looked like crap. Like, what am I doing, right? So
So from a coloring perspective, then, like all of that extra detail, if you've got a full uniform, all the kit, all of the accessories, how much more time consuming is it to how many shades of desert or green or whatever it is that you're putting in there? Is that a very time consuming part of the coloring, like those particular kinds of details?
Yes, the more detailed something is, the more time consuming, the more tedious, the more agitated I get. Not gonna
Right,
lie.
right.
So I was very glad that the pages weren't they were detailed but not overly detailed to the point where I was sitting there for like 5, 6 hours trying to color it.
Yeah.
So I'm
Wow.
grateful for that.
well, I think it helps that the setting was in the desert, right?
That
For
too, yeah.
about 90% of the book, you're in the
Yeah.
desert. So when you look at any military movie that have been made about Afghanistan or Iraq or some of the places we've been out there and in the Middle East, um,
Mhm.
there's not a lot. It's just deserts, abandoned buildings all of a sudden, broken walls. A lot of times my go-to was like, I'll put a broken wall behind the scene here so I don't have to. It's that or an open desert. Even in their
Hmm.
Mhm.
base, It's very it's all like hangars and similar type buildings. So it's not like you have. I'm not going to say, well, I'm going to put a bunch of vehicles here that with bright
Hmm.
colors because you don't have them. They're all the same color. They're all like beige and everything is beige, right? They're all
Hmm. Well,
same
it has to all
colors.
blend in, right? So,
Yeah.
No, exactly.
yeah.
So it was even like sometimes to do backgrounds, I'd be, huh, what am I gonna do? Another rock, you know what I mean? Or another broken wall here, or some
Yeah.
smoke in the back, right? Or and Brianna, even her coloring, like which I kind of liked, is there's always a little bit of a mist of sand or in the front
Hmm.
because it's true when you're out there, it's constantly kind of windy.
Mhm.
It's constantly in the way. So that added to that the sort of that depth of the drawings, right? To add sort of that smoke in the front in a sense, or that dust in the front, and which I really like, which you can't really draw that kind of stuff, right? You can do clouds, but after a while it's like, so at least with the digital coloring, it allows you to do some really nice kind of layering of these elements and when you see it all together, like I said, oh man, it looks even better now. But so, and when we get to the later part of the story, now we're in a store at one point, we're in a house at one point. So you get all of a sudden you got a bed, you got a whatever. So now you're going to a different palette, but then it's at night, I think, at one point. So you can't go with
Hmm.
really super bright colors because it's dark, right? So there's a lot
Right.
of cool little stuff like that all of a sudden you've done 8 or 9 pages just like camel colors essentially and khakis and stuff like that, and suddenly you to say, okay, I'm done with that palette for a while until the next book maybe, and now you're so it was neat to see what Brianna was able to do with that, right? Because I don't when you draw, I have some ideas of colors in mind, but it's always better when somebody else has to worry about that in a sense. And it's true. I remember there was one drawing that Justin told me. I can't remember which one it was, but there was a lot of details, and Brianna was like, "Holy crap, there's a lot of details, right?" Right? Because even the first few opening pages, it's more colorful because they're in a bunker and they're doing their thing, and so there's more colors there, and then it switches to like desert and on the base and whatever, right? So and then so you get like the bookend of colors, a brighter color that kind of darker in the middle. Oh, and
Is this are you putting this together in sequential order, or is it like a movie where they, it's on location for certain bits and pieces, and like do you get a sense as you're going along here? So now we're working on, page 7, so I've read the first 7 pages of the book. Are you like, do you get the story that way,
uh
or is it?
I was doing them. Like I said, I read it as I went, but with the way I draw is weird. I like if I one thing I got to experiment more into it, and I did it a little bit, but not as much because is the way I arrange my panels, right? Like I was always like, if it was 6 panel, it'd be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If there was 5, there was a little bit of liberty to make them a little bit different sizes. So as I would prepare a page, often one thing that I do, I always start with the drawing that I never start with like always the top drawing. I may start with the drawing right like a panel, the
Okay.
last panel of that page, whatever I feel comfortable drawing at the time. If it's like, oh, it's only a headshot or above shoulder shot, that's an
Hmm.
easier shot to do than a full body or having 3 or 4 characters. So I'll work on the easy shots, get them out of the way, and then, of course, I have whatever I decide to draw here. I got to go back and make sure that the details are included in the previous picture. So if the guy, like I said, has a scar, I got to make sure he's got it in the first panel if he's in that panel. So for me, it was like I said, I drew it as I went along with the story. So it was nice to it was kind of like I said, as if I was reading it for the first time.
Yeah.
I was just drawing it, and I do a few little thumbnails, to the side. Just a lot of time, I just go right on the paper and I start putting it together, and if I break a panel or if a character comes out of the panel, I just kind of do it as I go along. But one thing I want to experiment more on the next few books, because we're supposed to do another 3, um, depending on how well this one does, is to experiment a little bit more with that. To get out of my comfort zone and again, it's a story though that it's not like a traditional superhero comic where you can have a lot of breaking of the panels and big shots where the and diagonal panels and stuff like that. It's a little bit more military is more kind of organized, right?
Right.
Right.
So you kind of think about that as well, right? You don't want to
So
do it so well that they get PTSD out of it. You know what I mean?
yeah,
Like,
absolutely.
right.
Two questions and to follow sort of to segue to what Sebastian was talking about. But Brianna, when you get the script and Sebastian gets the script, are you suddenly going, okay, this is like you're going, this is in your mind sort of what kind of a color scheme you're thinking of using before you've even seen the pictures from or the stuff from Sebastian?
I actually didn't read the script. I didn't read any of it. I've been really busy. So my day job is actually backgrounds. So going from that to coloring comic pages is pretty much the same thing. So I'm doing exactly the same thing 24/7.
Right.
Um, but because my job is coloring, I kind of have a sense of color schemes already. I know kind of like color theory, what works and what doesn't work. So um, when I get a page, I kind of experiment on what kind of colors work the best for that scenario. But yeah, I don't read the script.
No, and
Fair.
that's absolutely fine. Now, how did you guys think that, wow, this is a big project to take up when, Hal and Justin are saying, pitching it to you and going, we want to do 4 issues. So issue one, I believe Justin, when we talked to him, is going to the printer sometime in the next week or so. Have
Mhm.
you guys haven't seen the finished product yet then, have you?
Not the physical, not the
Okay,
physical.
nothing physical. Okay.
Okay.
No.
But
Just what just was like
Mhm.
on Dropbox. We have all
okay.
the pages with the final lettered pages and whatever, and the different covers that we've done. But
But
yeah,
with everything that you guys do, because like Sebastian and Brianna, and we all have like day jobs here, did that seem like, wow, this is a big project, but it sounds like it's like, I mean, just the whole concept of the story is really cool. Now to see what you guys are putting, to paper, was it overwhelming?
I was personally nervous to say yes because at the same time as this is happening that I'm working on this, like the con season is coming. Well, I say the con season, I only do like two,
Mhm.
but and I know maybe Brianna, you do more, but I always like to prepare some stuff. So like my plan, like I said earlier, was to draw about 1 or 2 pages a week, but in between I would try to start drawing like if a movie was coming out, like when Blue Beetle came out, I drew Blue Beetle, you know what I mean? And I sold
Mhm.
it when I was in Fredericton. So you try to prepare for those events as well to have a little bit of stuff in stock. Like I obviously I don't do a lot. I don't do prints, so it's all original. So I always try to have some Spider-Man in the banks because I love drawing Spider-Man, right? And so, and that takes time. So I would try to squeeze one in there, and then I was doing that story, and I had Paul, my other writer from St. John, Sebastian, how's that drawing coming along? And I was asked for another one. I'm like, geez, boys, I said, I'm probably gonna have to say no eventually because I always said that if this became too much like a job then it's not a hobby anymore for me.
Right.
Mhm.
I don't need another job. I got one that keeps me busy enough as it is. Right. And I think that was part of it where it made me really nervous that I could not deliver. And we had talked about some dates where we wanted it done by. I think we probably a couple weeks behind overall. Like it wasn't
Mhm.
terrible. So I was happy to be able to like I said, as long as I have a lot of lead up to it, that I have enough time. But if you ask me to produce something to publish next month, I would say no, I can't. I just can't. I if not, it'll be crap, absolute crap, and I don't want to do that. So that it was important to me to make sure that we that I could commit to it. But again, there was that nervousness hanging above me, and I
Hmm.
said like I knew how important this was to Justin and Al, and especially
Mhm.
Justin, having a lot of conversation with him, and I wanted to make sure I could do it justice, right? Uh,
Right.
and again, my name was associated with it, and I wanted, and he had said like once you got issue, will you do issue number one, and we want to go all the way to do hopefully up to 4 issues, so and we don't want to have to change artists, going into the next one, so it was kind of a bigger commitment that I'm usually comfortable going ahead with. But if I have enough lead time, it shouldn't be an issue. As long as he doesn't tell me I want all the other 3 issues by midsummer or something, right? I said I want to live outside of
Right.
this,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
and I think that's probably goes for a lot of us. It's because once you're done writing, and I'm not saying that to be mean, but once you're done writing your
Mhm.
pages, you send them along, your work is
Right.
done. And I'm seeing
Right.
guys that write like multiple comics, and you see them now, even like when Stanley used to do with the Marvel Method way, which was amazing when you think about it, that the amount of comics he was writing that would be published every month, right? But once it was out of his hands, that's why he could do so many, because he was like, hey, draw something and I'll add words to it, right?
Right.
Some of the writers now, it's still you got to come up with even better stories because there's been so much history and whatever. And I think we do have a bit of a unique story here that you don't see very often. And I think
No.
there's with
Mhm.
Justin's background as being military, I think there's some appetite there, even from the folks in the military that are very interested in the story. And I think that's, to me, is a big compliment to the work that was done by our team, right? Is
Mhm.
the fact that we have that interest. It may mean something for those individuals to read it, and even Justin be like, "Holy crap, you drew this!" Then it looks so much like a place I was in Afghanistan. Like that looks just like that's what it reminds me of, right? So for me, it was very gratifying, I guess, to get those kind of comments, because I think it's an important story. Like, we knew those wars in Afghanistan and Iraq and places like
Mhm.
that have been pretty bad, right? Both for the military and for the people that live there. So it was, you know, and even there's some terrorists that are shown in here, and like I said, there's the whole idea of you don't want to dehumanized, those individuals. They had their own kind of ideas and radical ideas or whatever. And but at the same time, I don't want to put myself in the target of groups that are also saying that we're this or that, right? So that
Right.
there's you don't want to kind of cross a line there. So there was a lot of thought about going and drawing certain.
Mhm.
I do some stuff in shadows to kind of keep it a little bit more vague. I'm going to see, that it's probably somebody from the Taliban or something like that, but I'm not going out and it's not saying, "Hey, I love the Taliban" on this shirt. You know what I mean? Like, just we kind of leave it a little bit. It's just there's not a lot of mention of certain things in there. I think just to keep it kind of, I don't know, respectful, I guess, of
Yeah.
that
Sure.
war or whatever.
Mhm.
So,
I want to ask Brianna as well, because I mean, Sebastian touched on this a little bit here. Sebastian's done a cover for Got Your Six, one of six covers done by various artists, which I think is really cool.
Yeah.
You guys also collaborated on a special Fredericton 175 City Hall
Mhm.
collaboration that was out at Freddie Beach last year, and then Brianna the year before at Big Country Comic Expo. You had the Fredericton Walking Trail Bridge for the Archie cover comic, and I remember talking to you about
Mhm.
that, and you were so nervous about that book coming out there. Are the nerves still there every time you have a book coming out? Because I mean, you have that, you've got the 175 with Fredericton last year, and now you just revealed a really big one for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, a wraparound cover coming. So are the nerves there every time?
Oh God, yeah. Yeah, they never go away. Never go away. Like that one in Fredericton was one of my it was my first published big cover I ever did. So that was really nerve-wracking. But this one that just came out is like a whole other ballpark. Like that's IDW. Like
Yeah,
that's
that is
like
huge.
Archie, yeah, that's great, but Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, like everyone knows Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Yeah.
So
Especially with
yeah.
the anniversary coming up
Yeah,
of
it's
this.
not an
Mhm.
insignificant issue as well. So it's
right.
it's
No,
it's one of those
no. From
legacy
my
things.
understanding, it's the last one actually, and then they
Oh,
Oh
are
wow.
re doing a soft reboot
Okay.
because Sophie, I think it's Sophie Campbell, the writer and the artist, is leaving.
Oh wow.
okay.
From my understanding, that's what's going on,
Wow.
and that's
So
all public knowledge. So
Okay.
yeah, yeah, it's public knowledge.
Mhm.
Yeah.
So when it comes to covers, I know talking to other artists that you sort of get a little more free range of what you can create on the cover, because really the cover is coming out while the rest, it's just basically boom, this is what the cover is. Is that the same like for the Turtles cover? They just said this is you're drawing this, congratulations, go tour?
Um, I don't. Sorry, could you like
I'm just
say
curious,
it?
like did IDW say you're doing the cover for uh this issue? Did they give you instruction of what they wanted to see on it, or
Oh, okay. No. So like all studios, they want a concept first. So Justin already had a concept. The one I did is actually his concept. I had two others, but he didn't want them. uh, no. He had a really strong idea in his mind, and I liked the concept as well. So we I did the concept art, and IDW liked it. I just had to switch up a couple of things for it. So every studio has their kind of thing that you need to keep consistent. So
Mhm.
as long as it's consistent, they're pretty easy going. Um, and yeah, Archie is a little more easier to play around with as opposed to IDW. But yeah, that was
Did you get a little more
yeah.
leeway in terms of like how long ago did they approach you about doing this? Because I know like when you guys are talking today about drawing the comics and coloring them and all this, you've got certain deadlines to meet.
Mhm.
Do you have a little more leeway with doing the Turtles cover?
So it depends on how fast Justin can get an approval from them. So originally it was supposed to be a collaboration with Hugh Rookwood?
Rookwood? Yep.
Rookwood,
Yep.
I think.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. And then I'm not quite sure what happened, but Justin decided he wanted both of us to do an individual cover. And he told me it took quite a while to convince IDW to give me a shot because obviously I'm really new into the business. So this is only, I think I'm going on year 2 or 3 now.
Hmm.
So it did take a while, but once I was approved, I believe it was approved at the end of November, early December, and then I had until I believe February to do it,
Wow.
but I got it done I think the beginning of January because I had a lot of pile up to do for work. So, yes. So usually it depends. So we'll give you from 2 months to a week.
Okay.
So
Right.
I've had that happen. I've had a cover due in 2 days
Oh my
that
Wow.
goodness.
Justin
Wow.
just kind of got me in. So,
Wow.
but they tend to give you a lot of leeway. It's really it depends on how fast your agent can get you into the cover
Right.
Hmm.
for the
Right.
cover, sorry.
That
Yeah.
process, that had been ongoing for some time because I think if I remember correctly, in August there was a little hint dropped that we weren't really allowed to discuss outside of when we were talking at your table next to Hal, right? There was a
Yeah, sorry for
Mhm.
that as well, by
that
the
you had to
way.
sit with Hal.
No, that's okay.
That was
Yeah.
fine.
I'm
But yeah,
used to it.
Right.
Yeah.
But these things do take a long time. And I think just I was even when you were talking about the Fredericton 175, I remember Justin talking about that months
Yeah,
before we
at
had
East
seen
Coast.
anything on it at ECCE. And then like
Yeah.
literally it was going around the room at Freddie Beach in August. There was like I think Giselle hadn't put there was elements that still hadn't been added to it. Or was it
Yeah.
no, or
Giselle was
sorry,
doing the
that was at ECCE,
yeah, at
right? Yeah.
ECCE, so
Yeah.
the book was there on for Freddie Beach.
Yeah, that was the first. That was when we first met Hal.
Yeah.
That was yeah. Okay, now yeah, it's funny. I like my mind is like putting all of this together because it seems like actually there's been since Freddie Beach Fan Fest or Big Country actually back in November of
Mhm.
2020.
Well, that's yeah, it was
There's kind
November.
of been an explosion here locally of like I think Justin's done a lot to drum up a
Agreed.
hype
Mhm.
for this particular group of people and we've been huge beneficiaries of being able to go around the last 3 or 4 cons that we've been to and speak to all of you and see you all in person. So it's kind of a I don't know. I think of it like a pop explosion back in the 90s with music. It almost feels like, and I'm not sure, does it feel differently being part of the sort of this East Coast maritime creator scene? Does it feel different now with the introduction of like a Freddie Beach and have like a Justin Force kind of pushing things?
I would say yes, and I wanted to. You mentioned something that to me I noticed from the so when Justin approached me to work on that 175th cover, um, he said, draw me this massive background, City Hall and all that, double split. And I know that was, I think, the one that Brianna was like, man, there's so many details to color. And I was trying to make it so there was a certain amount of details, but at the same time, again, like I'm not going to do every single little brick that's in
Mhm.
the wall. And so that then went to different artists, went all across Canada to, geez, I should know his name, Tom.
Tom Grummett.
Tom
Tom
Grummett,
Drummond,
Drummond,
yeah,
yeah.
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 right? And it went to him, and it stopped. I think it stopped along the way, and every time it would go to the next guy, I would get a picture just to say, "Oh, this is coming along, Sebastian. Look at this." And the whole time, I think for me, what the biggest thing about that cover is when I finally got it back with all the art back on it. It hadn't been inked. I knew it was going to be inking the background, but I thought each artist was going to
Oh
ink
wow.
their own
Okay.
work.
Right.
So all of a sudden, I'm getting this thing and it's pristine, right? And all of a sudden, and I'm like, Justin, so you want me to ink the whole thing, right? He's like, yeah, I want you like, and so all of a sudden, I'm like inking Dan Parent, right? Who I
Wow. Yeah.
grew up like when I stopped reading Archie's back in probably the 90s, early 2000. Dan was becoming a big thing at the time. He was taking over for the Carlos and some of the guys that had worked on the Archie comics for decades before. And I was like, okay, I get to ink him. I get to ink Tom Grummett. I get to ink, and I'm thinking to and I'm like so freaking nervous, right? I'm like
Right.
getting all my best, Pigma pen or whatever, my
Yeah.
whatever. And I'm just like, I'm sitting there and I'm like, okay, just to get to not mess it up because I'm like, I do not want to mess. And Dan had done this beautiful Sabrina the Teenage Witch, and I wanted to make sure that I was not going to mess that up, right? And so for me, it was like even if the book was published, the cover was obviously here more in Fredericton for the copies we had for the show and whatnot. But just the idea of being able to do ink an actual professional like a Tom Grummett who's been in the business for freaking 50 years, right? Like it was to me it was like I said, if this was the end of my career as an artist, I'm okay with that, right? Like I said, that's my peak, you know what I
Yeah.
mean? Now it's downhill. But it was that and when Brianna started putting the colors to it and I start seeing it come back, I was like, man, this looks awesome. And I've got a copy of it here in my room. And I'm just like to me it's like it was very special because it was sort of my not just like little local stuff. To me it seemed like I have a cover that I was part of on an Archie comics, an
Hmm.
actual
Yeah.
comic on the inside. It's not like ads or anything like that. So that was a big thing for me personally. And when I met Justin, I was working a lot with him during that time, and I was like, God, this guy's probably full of crap. He's telling me he's got all these contacts and stuff. You meet these people, right? And you're like, yeah, sure. This and that. Stanley, sure. And all of a sudden, um, Brianna's getting work, and then all of a sudden, I remember Sammy Francis
Sammy,
from
yeah.
Yeah.
out west, right?
Mhm.
And I'm thinking, well, maybe he does have connections more than I'm thinking. He's saying that, but sometimes he's walking the walk, right? Like
Yeah.
Yeah.
and so for me, it was like, okay, this guy is actually he's my kind of my way in into
This
do
world.
bigger things, right?
Yeah.
And as opposed to in the past where a lot of my work with Paul is mostly we don't make money off of it. If Paul sells it, he makes money. I'm fine with it, but it wasn't that same caliber, that same
Hmm.
level, if you will, of, all of a sudden I was feeling that, okay, this is a bit more bigger. And if that's as big as it gets, I'm fine with it. But it's just awesome because so like I said, with Justin, like I realized this guy's got some really seem to have some really good connection that's helping out
Mhm.
those local artists,
Yeah.
right? I was super pumped when I just with Brianna was talking about the work that she got out of it and what Sammy got out of it. There's amazing talent all across Canada, and sometimes if I always say you do have to be at the right place at the right time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Brianna, did you get that same sense of Sebastian going, okay, I'm coloring Tom Grummett's work right now, like that?
I actually didn't know who worked on it. I knew Dan Parent had worked on it because I know a lot of the artists, but I don't actually let me rephrase that. I don't know a lot of the artists except for Dan Parent. Oops,
Right.
hold on. Oh, sorry. Um, I didn't know who Tom Grummett was. I didn't know who Giselle was. So when I got it, I just kind of colored. I just
Yeah.
kind of did my thing. So I didn't find out till Freddie Beach who actually worked on what. And I was like, oh,
Wow.
okay. Well, so I think that's probably better that I didn't know. So
It takes the
There is,
pressure off.
well,
Yeah.
there's a
it
certain,
does, it does.
it's like a certain prestige, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like I think if you had an opportunity to work really with the bigger the person in the industry is, like, if Nick Bradshaw was Sebastian, you want to ink one of my issue, I die, right? Like, you
Right.
know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
kind of like that. You say, like, you realize, wow, like Tom Grummett, like I knew Tom from some of the work on Teen Titans, some of the stuff from before. I love art collecting. You can see some of the walls behind me. So I remember, I hope he still has it. The next show, he had a beautiful page of the Teen Titans. I think he was selling for $500. I should have gotten it. I'm always looking for new art, to plaster on the wall and get that dirty look from my wife, and and because I spend too much, and then I just love, and I'm thinking this is a guy who has been there, and I've had some great chats with him, and how he came up, like he's worked, like he was following George Perez on the Teen Titans, like,
Yeah.
Mhm.
I mean, George Perez was like a god with the Teen Titans and the work he's done, and having so many freaking characters fit on in a panel, and you got Tom that follows, and he's just doing a beautiful artwork, and then you're all of a sudden you're inking him, right? It'd be the same for me if it'd be the Bashima brothers, or the Ramita Jr. or somebody like that, that I grew up with. If I could ever ink their stuff, like I said, I'd die a happy man. You know what I mean? Like, so
Yeah.
I felt like that to me because of how much I love superhero artwork, and I know the work they've done with it. There was a few that I didn't realize how big they were, a little bit similar to Brianna, until I kind of Googled them later when Justin was saying, "Oh, they did this work." I'm like, "Oh, who's this guy?" Or Giselle. I knew a little bit about Giselle, but I knew she had, and there's some pretty wild stuff she's worked on.
Yes.
But,
Yeah.
but it was still fun. Like, because there was a few other, it was I think John Delaney.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Start looking into his work, and I start, you know what I mean? Like, so there was just a few people that so it was kind of nice because it also gave me an opportunity to look into their work, right?
Yeah.
There was a lot of good, it's nice networking opportunity, as well as an opportunity to see what other people are working on, and it puts you in touch with them in a sense. Anyways, it was a really fun thing to do. And I even told Justin this year, do something similar, let's do it, but I know it's only in a few months. I don't know if we'll have enough time.
It's
We
coming.
did have
Yeah.
leeway the last
Yeah.
time, right? We
Yeah.
had 6 months or so. So,
I just want to ask you guys a quick question here because we sort of started doing this when we're talking to artists, so we meet at the convention and whatnot. And we actually, funny enough, we asked Nick Bradshaw this at East Coast Comic Expo last year if he had a bucket list or a wish list of a character or someone, a book he wanted just to do a cover on, and he said Rom was it, and then. What
Oh,
happens back
no.
in December, late November? It's Rom versus the X-Men, covered by Nick Bradshaw. So Brianna, I'm going to ask you first. Is there a bucket list, wish list out there of someone or a character that you would love to get your hands on, even just to do a cover?
Um, I always want, I don't care which character, I just want to do a Marvel cover. That's it. I
Okay.
don't care which character, but it's been on my bucket list since I was like 15.
Wow.
Wow, there you have it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
Sebastian?
yeah.
well, I would lie if Spider-Man for me would be the number one, right? You can see the Spider-Man
Yeah.
here.
Yeah.
Uh, but I'm with Brianna on that. I think anything Marvel. I'm a big Marvel guy. I do read some DC, but I'm like 98% Marvel. If I had an opportunity, my God, it would be. But I'd love to, just off the top of my head, like, Sal Buscema, who's still alive, he's like 91, I think, was a big influence with the Spectacular Spider-Man that he did back in the
Mhm.
late 90s, during this Clone Saga and all that. A big fan of his work. I've always been a big fan of John Romita Jr. I know a lot of people don't like his current art style. I love it for whatever reason. And if it was Scott Anna or Klaus Janson, if I could draw Spider-Man, one of those two guys could ink it, I'd be like in heaven.
That's
Like,
it.
I've met Scott Hanna before. I follow him on Facebook, Instagram, and everywhere. And I met him in New York about 15 years ago at a New York Comic Con. And if I could do work with one of those guys, that would just be unbelievable. There's so many great artists really anywhere. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? Like, there's more and more upcomers now that are on some of the Spider-Man titles. Like, I'm a Spider-Man whore. I read everything if there's Spider-Man in the title, right? So there's just so many great artists that are up and comers. A lot of them that do digital artwork now, and it's beautiful, right?
Yeah.
And so there's Marco Cicchetto that did the Ultimate Spider-Man that just came out here recently, 1 and 2. He's a phenomenal artist, and there's just guys like that I'd love to even have an ounce of their talent, really, at the end of the day, right?
Oh, well, don't sell yourself short.
Yeah.
We're gonna. You got a book coming out with a great team right now that we're looking forward to seeing. Speaking of network, it's con season's almost upon us. Are you folks going to be at all the usuals? Brianna, are we going to see you?
What's your schedule?
Oh my God. I think I was counting it yesterday. I think I have 10 cons this year,
Holy!
almost
Wow.
one
Oh
a
my
month.
goodness!
We have four back to back in May and June.
Oh my gosh!
So
So you're
yeah,
doing all like you? Are you going up to CaperCon and doing all the
Caper.
East Coast
Okay,
stuff or?
hold on. I've got a list.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm going to PEI and then
Mhm.
Miramichi, Cape Breton, and then there's one in Yarmouth called YCon,
Yeah.
Okay.
and then there's ECCE. And then I got into Montreal Comic Con.
Oh wow.
Okay.
Yeah,
Congrats. That's amazing.
yeah, thanks. Um, Pretty Beach, of course. Then there's Regina Expo. I also got into Winnipeg Comic Con,
Okay.
and there's one more that I'm not allowed to talk about yet.
Okay.
Fair enough.
That's fair
Yeah,
enough. We
Right.
won't try and
yeah,
pry
Just
that out of
we'll
you.
just keep an eye out for the announcement. That's it. That's
yeah.
some busy times. How about you, Seb? You're going to be
Uh, I'm Justin approached me by doing some, to promote the book. I don't know that I'll be able to attend not 10, but part of it is not that part of it is probably that I don't want to. It is a lot of work. There's a lot of cost
Hmm.
involved to it, but I am planning to be obviously the ECC in Moncton. Our whole group are going to be together, I believe,
Hmm.
under to promote the Got Your Six. That's one I'm definitely going to. I'm going to be doing the one in Fredericton. Locally, this where I tend to do better in sales because you got to look at that, right? Like,
yeah.
Yeah.
and the big thing is I always say at least when you get to a point where you can get a free table right off the bat, at least you can come in and start making a little
Hmm.
bit of profit right off the bat, right?
Right.
But then traveling, listen, I'd love to go. I've talked about, Halcon and some of the ones even in Halifax. I just don't know if I have the willingness to go. And it just like I said, the cost adds up, right?
It
Yeah.
does.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Unless you can share a room or something. Even then, it can get pretty expensive. And I try to sell my art. I always fluctuate with my prices. I've really cut down on my prices because I
Hmm.
don't know. I'd rather sell more, more
Yeah.
more units at a lower price than try to sell, 2, 3 units at a higher price.
Hmm.
So
Well,
and
yeah.
like it's a hard business. Like I can like when I go to a con, like in Fredericton last year, I was so freaking busy that even by the time it wrapped up on Sunday, I talked to two guys that asked me for a piece. I said, I'm going to ship them to you on me
Yeah.
because I don't want to rush it. There was 45 minutes left and I still had two to do. I said, I can't do it.
You
So
were
I
head down that entire
Yeah, I
amount of
remember
it.
that. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah, I was very busy. It was hot as heck in that arena as
Yes,
well,
it was.
right?
Yes.
And which I don't mind because I do have the capacities. Some individuals don't do as many on site. It is very demanding. Now, I'm very fortunate that whatever I drew, nobody's ever said, "Oh, I don't want to pay for that." But it is you spend the whole time you spend your head down, and I didn't even have a chance to really walk around and look at much because I was just doing that stuff. So I love doing cons, but at the same time I love having my weekends as well
Sure.
because during the week, even
Considering we all have full-time jobs, right?
yeah,
So, I
and
mean,
and
you guys are there all weekend giving your
it
time to
was the
that.
last
So,
2 years has been extremely busy for us where I work at because of big programs in the summer stuff like
mhm.
that. So it's even in the evenings I find myself like just working on stuff that's not comic related, right?
Right.
So it was like I says when you only have the weekend to really kind of rest. You don't really want to be. I
Who
was
who who is our third guest, by the way? I'm
right.
just our third guest there,
So
Brianna.
I'm so
It's
I have
Rue. Her
three.
name's Rue.
I have three cats, and I
None to make an appearance,
no
eh?
no. I'm surprised. One normally would come. Like we were in Florida last week when we got back last night actually, and they've been sort of passive aggressive with us. Like
Okay.
they
They're
were
upset,
back, but
yeah.
they're
Yeah.
kind of
You
pissed at
went
the
away
same
without them.
time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so there was a lot of little piles of puke and places, and yeah, you know.
We can all relate as
Yeah.
cat
Yeah.
owners.
Yeah.
It was so great to be back.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Oh wow. Well, look, we're at the end of the hour, but this has been awesome. We're so glad that we got a chance to connect, and really looking forward to running into you guys in person. Can't wait to see Got Your Six, the final product, and we've heard all kinds of great stuff
Yeah.
about all of your hard work on it as well. Just go back our last episode with Justin and Hal. Nothing but high praise and amazement and recognition of the sheer volume of work and time management that all of this involves. So congrats on where you are so far with it, and really looking forward to seeing it. And I wish you all the best in the weeks and months and years to come.
Yeah, thanks guys for having us.
Thank
It's
you. Yes.
been
Anytime,
great.
It's
anytime.
it's been a lot of fun. And Brianna, we are taking orders. So if there's something that you're looking for when you come to Fredericton that you can't get anywhere else, just ask Hal. There's like Ormocto pizza he's really dying for. So we're gonna work
Apparently.
on that for him.
Yeah.
So you place the order with
Okay.
us, we'll make sure it happens.
All right. Sounds good.
Right on. Thanks
Thanks
Thanks a
again,
a lot,
lot,
Chloe.
guys.
guys.
Take
Appreciate
care.
it.
All right,
Guys.
take care.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.